We know what we are.
We get it.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. But if you can draw a direct line from something, then it gets kind of scary. Right?
Yes,
Yeah,
if it's special legislation, basically, if it's just for one particular thing, we're buying something that's going to directly benefit one of our members, then maybe that's a question.
Yeah. So wouldn't it now? I do know that there are, there's ethics and everything else, but then we have a problem with the ethics guys. Now that there's all this. What's going on in that office? I don't know.
Yeah, we don't know who the commissioner is going to be right now. Yeah.
So that being said. Let's talk about something that does make sense. I had the other day, and even though they may be of different ideologies, quite often people can work together. I think it is it's Gil Rivera and Laura Thielen, both teaming up to make their case for the purchase by the state of certain of the ag property by Dole to turn into ag. I mean, it's hard to argue that. Yeah,
well, I think, people are asking more and more for more ag lands, but we're also developing places like Ho'opili on ag lands. So I think the state looking at trying to preserve some of our ag lands is not a bad idea. It's just more of a matter of where's that money going to come from, and can we make it a revenue production for the state?
Exactly. But there are some that are saying, hey, look, if you can talk about revenue bonds, if I were an investor, no matter how big or how little the interest was, you just want a safe investment.
Right.
And as long as you think the state is safe,
right.
Forget if they might end up a few billion in the hole with rail suits, but let's assume that they might be okay.
Okay, yes, if you're assuming.
I would feel as an investor very comfortable knowing that I was investing in something that was contributing to farming or to agriculture or to feeding ourselves.
Right. And we're looking to do the same thing possibly with the Wahiawa General Hospital site.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, I don't know what's happening with that, but it doesn't look as though there's going to be taxpayers' dollars, except that I think that there's a little bit of confusion. When we say, well, it's a revenue bond thing, and so we're going to pay so much for the bond.
Right.
But where are we going to get the money? Well, we're going to get it from taxpayers. The interest. I mean, where does the money come from,
Right. And over time, there's no free money. So everything, even over, our CIP projects are when we build new schools, over time, we do have to pay those back.
Yep. So there you go. See me now or see me later. However, it is comforting to taxpayers to think, okay, that's good.
Right.
There is one thing that, though, is, when we say all the time that when somebody pens a piece of legislation and is going to want float bonds to cover it, that, this continually floating of bonds, what happens when you have too many of them out there, you can't service them, your credit, your score goes down.
That's right. Yeah. So you don't want to overly fund things. So it's like buying too much on a credit card, right? Or buying too many houses on a mortgage. But I think, anytime we can buy assets, that's good spending rather than spending on things that are going to go away within the year, right?
Isn't the hard balance, and I mentioned this when I was talking with Gil Rivera the other day, that most of us out there that are non-office holders are thinking, maybe where am I going to go on vacation this year? Or, I'm going to have a wedding later on this year. I got to find some money for it. You guys, by virtue of what you do, you have to look decades forward.
You would hope.
Yeah.
Yes.
But see, the main complaint on this other thing was that if we rush headlong into building the housing that everybody seems to say we need, at what expense, right? Where are we going to build it?
Right. Yeah, and I don't think, I think that's why they're trying to preserve ag lands out in central Oahu, because there's more and more development. But developers seem eager to develop in the urban core, as long as we make it a little bit easier for them to do that.
Yeah, nobody says, hey, let's go build farms.
I don't know that the state has to do that much building, right? And that's a discussion we're having. How much should the state be investing in housing itself? A lot of private companies will do it.
When you take a look at the big availability of land, there are many that say, you know what? A lot of naysayers about anti-development, they're looking past, we have plenty of land that we can farm.
We do have a lot of land.
And that we need to keep sight of that. Yeah. And not all of it is controlled by the state. There's a lot of private landowners that they're being good stewards. They're using it. They're not developing yet, but the big thing is yet, isn't it?
Right. Well, and I think, anything that's, again, along the urban core, if it's going to be along the rail route, that's, like it or not, that's going to be the new urban core.
Sure.
So things like Ho'opili, we're having to build on ag lands, but it's right at the start of the rail route. And we do need that housing.
What sort of rumblings, when you mentioned rail, what sort of rumblings were there down at the Score building on the newest appointment of Colleen Hanabusa, and the fact that everybody seems to be now admitting we've made a lot of mistakes and it's going to cost us a lot more money than we thought.
Yeah. I think, everybody's frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's really frustrated because the state did allow the city to increase the GET on the belief that they were going to finish the project.
Right.
So now that there's rumors that they won't finish, it's crazy. So we'll see. Colleen Hanabusa is trying to make a name for herself, right?
Yeah, but you know what? Herein lies the dilemma. My audience thinks this. I think this. Threatening to cut things off is kind of silly.
It's ridiculous.
Because you can't hold back because, I hate to say this, but the baby and the bathwater are out the window.
It's too late. Yeah, we have to build it. It's crazy to only build 10 miles, especially only to the stadium. Nobody's going to ride that rail. So,
but I did see, and I had a chance to chat with Mayor Caldwell a little bit, and one of the toughest announcements any official's got to make. Oh yeah, we're wrong, and it's going to cost us more, and it's not realistic to think we're going to make that date because we're not. Yeah. And one guy said, well, this is $70 million. And one guy in the back said, how about it's probably $200 million? Yeah. We always get told one thing, right? And then something else happens.
Right. And it's interesting because the mayoral race is going on now, right? So you've got Ernie Martin, who is the council chair, and Kurt Caldwell, who's the mayor, and both are responsible. Yep. And at this point, then we have Colleen Hanabusa, who someday will be running for governor or something else,
you bet.
Right?
Yeah.
So now we have a lot of politicians involved that want a future.
I think that taking the stewardship of heart is like the biggest crap roll Vegas trip that you can make.
I can't.
Because you're either going to come in a hero or a goat.
Right.
There's no in between.
Right. Yeah. She really rolled the dice on this one.
Okay. Do you feel lucky? Well, do you? More coming up. Beth Fukumoto Chang in the house. We'll go to your phone calls in a bit. Remember, no email during these discussions because they're kind of a little bit political, but we're happy to take your calls at 296-KHNR. That's 296-5467. But in the meantime, mail in with traffic on a manic Monday morning.
Stuck in traffic? We've got the answer.
HFD.
Everybody's doing the dance. Everybody's doing the dance. It's Monday morning, Manic Monday means it's Minority Monday morning. I kind of coined that phrase, and I guess it is because Beth Fukumoto Chang is in the house. And it is, you're part of the minority. You have to be a very, very vocal minority, right, to get the point across. But, I do know that people have to understand, at the end of the day, or at lunchtime for that matter, you go across the street and have lunch with a Democrat. It's just stuff happens.
You have to.
Yeah, and so let's go to the phones. 296-KHNR is the number. I got Matt, Glenn first in Klee. He's got a question about the Big Island or something. I'm not quite sure. Hey, Glenn, good morning. Hello there.
Hello.
Yeah, go ahead, Glenn.
Hello.
Yes, apparently Glenn can't hear us, but we can hear him.
Yeah, okay.
Is that better, Glenn?
Yeah, I can hear you.
What's up?
Okay, I just wanted to ask the representative, what is the status on Senate Bill 3071 about the sale of land in Kapua? Because I saw in the article in the newspaper yesterday about Senate President Ron Kouchi of Kauai being involved in this. The land in Kapua on the Big Island, Kona, apparently is owned by a company of Kevin Show's family. Yeah,
you're going to have to speak up a lot more than you're speaking. We can hardly hear you.
The Senate President has business ties with him in the past, and he and others are trying to push for the sale of this land. So, to me, there's a conflict right there.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing that up, Glenn. I'm give you the answer off the air. We did broach it earlier. Maybe you weren't with us. I do know that this is going to be the concern of a lot of people today. Yeah. What do you think the status of this, and what is anybody going to take any action and look into it further? Is the Ethics Commission involved? Who's involved in this?
So the bill is still alive. So and there are
that is Bill 3071, right?
3071.
Yeah, okay.
And if the Ethics Commission could look at it. I think the press, the media is usually the best at making sure that politicians stay honest. So, yeah, I think that it's out is going to be useful. I'm not sure if it's going to affect whether or not the bill moves. It wasn't a bill that was being talked about all that widely to begin with, so this might cause people to look a little bit more closely. it's certainly making me look a little bit more closely.
Yeah. You know what I think the concern should be, and I'm glad Glenn called. Everybody should look at every development, but by the same token, bless the developers. Because, first of all, when they get granted something, if there's improprieties, if there's something going on, that's up to ethics or somebody else to find out. They're just doing business. I mean, you talk about this Trump phenomenon, right? The art of the deal. These guys are just trying to make deals because they're capitalists, right? They want to make money.
Right. The developers, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. In theory, politicians, not so much. But
the people. A lot of people hate developers until they can finally buy a home when I'm built.
Right.
Because now that I got mine, I'm happy.
Yeah, and people don't understand that.
Yeah. There is also something else. This is I first of all, I asked a question about the language of this thing. It was pretty interesting. This is an Associated Press story, and it says, "Agency to Hawaii residents, don't hate on tourists." I guess that's
Yeah.
Don't hate on me. But isn't it amazing? And I'm sure that you run into this in your district, that people think they're not attached to tourism.
Right. Yeah. People don't realize that's where we get the funding for so many different things. Yeah.
I mean, I don't know any family that can honestly say, our family's income and well-being doesn't have anything to do with tourism. That's just not true.
Right. Even if you're not directly tied, there are so many other factors. Right?
This one guy calls up. He says, "I'm a locksmith." Okay, I said. He says, "I don't depend on tourists." I said, "Okay, I never get any. I don't do any work for any hotels." He said, "I'm in the country," and I say, "Okay, the guy whose front door lock you just changed, where does he work?" Waikiki. He's in the hotels.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's like my friend Dog Chapman says, "You can run, but you can't hide from tourism." Right.
Right.
Yeah. What about when it comes out? And I know that you take a look at this a lot. Jonathan Osorio is a teacher at UH, as you know. He teaches Hawaiian studies. And he says in this story, the agency should be required to consider a long-range effects of continued growth on the resources and society. That is in some parts of the community, Beth. Do you hear this? We have enough tourists. We have to not have any more.
You do hear it. I think Oahu's also maxed out. There are some places to increase our tourism, but there's not a lot of space to build new hotels unless we start tearing them down. I think other islands are experiencing sort of a boom in tourism in other ways, though.
Most people, and I'm guilty of this myself, you don't think of a building being torn down.
Right.
And I can tell you of all of the ones that we've seen in Waikiki that have been imploded.
Yep.
I was there the day they knocked down the Biltmore Hotel and put up the Hyatt, And right now, look at the decision that was made to knock down the King's Village and put up a tower.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there are a lot of places that people say, we don't want any more tourists, but how about we improve the quality of the product so that we get a higher spender?
Yeah. Which makes a lot of sense.
Fine line, though, isn't it?
It is.
So do you pay particular attention to these people that want changes where they can take, say, a piece of waterfront and say, there's a beautiful piece of waterfront. We're going to put a hotel there.
Sure. I think anytime we're looking at doing anything to the beach or the shoreline, I think everybody pays more attention to that. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, that's what's on the plate. Now, when Beth says these bills are still alive, this is a dwindling number. We're starting to work on some things.
Yes.
What are some of the things that you think are alarming, or that people should look into a little bit more before they go ahead and do their thing?
Well, one of the big bills that we just passed out, actually, of conference committee on Friday, which is unusual, but we passed something out on Friday. It's the water rights bill. It's for it's not just for A and B, but the water rights bill about East Maui water.
Now, on that subject, where they agreed to release some, it didn't satisfy the farmers. They want more.
They do want more. They released 7 streams. Some farmers had initially said it was good and they were happy, but it's turning out that not everybody.
Yeah.
But the deal is that we are allowing carryover permits for 3 years instead of for 5. So
one guy said, and even though it's semi-political, look, it was a show of good faith, at least A and B.
Right.
But by the same token, by opening the ones that they did, they're admitting that they probably should open more of them.
They've been holding more water than they needed to. Yeah.
It's 728-296-KHNR is the number. That's 296-5467 if you would like to join us. That's the only way you can do it, by the way. And I'm straightening out my little screen so I can find out who's out there. Let's go out to Wahiawa. and talk with Richard, I think is out there. Hey, Richard, good morning. Thanks for calling.
Good morning. I have a question, but I'm just wondering what happened to Donna Kim. It seems suddenly somebody just cut her off or something. I'm just wondering about that. I'll take your answer off the air.
Okay, Donna Kim?
She seems fine. I didn't see anything about Donna.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't heard anything. Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, the same thing holds true for others. If you know, call us up and you can maybe help Richard. 7:29 is the time. There's more things to come, and Beth Fukumoto Chang and I are going to parse out some of these other bills. Like she said, the water one, and that's a huge, big issue. But is that even solvable in this session?
Well, the big issue is whether or not we were going to let people or organizations like A and B have carryover permits.
Yeah.
And we already voted on it.
Yeah.
So we'll see if it gets out of the House, but it's voted on at this point.
By the way, some of these things that come out of the Senate get dramatically changed. We had a couple of examples of those over the weekend, right?
Yes.
I mean, and it seems that does show that a lot of people don't understand, and maybe after the news break we can address a little bit. The Senate and the House aren't necessarily adversarial, but it is checks and balances. Mm-hmm. And you know what is the difference? Well, I guess the Senate and the districts of the House are a little bit different.
Yes,
So when they come together. Otherwise, somebody said, "Why do we have both bodies? Why don't we just have one body?"
Right. And there's a lot of overlap. I have two senators, but I think there are certain bills we can talk about that have big differences.
You're lucky. You got
between
extra.
the two. I do. Yeah.
More coming up. You're listening to The Answer. Beth Fukumoto Chang, and I'll be right back after our 7:30 report here on 690.
I'm Brenton Awa with your KITV Island News Update. A pedestrian has died after being hit by a car in Nanakuli last night. Police say around 8:30, a 19-year-old man was crossing.
You got to work with the hand that you got dealt. That's why. 7:35 is the time. Beth Fukumoto Chang is in the house. We're talking Minority Monday morning and some of these bills that are around and how in the final analysis, we're talking a little bit off the air again about when you're in Hawaii. It's such a small place. It's impossible not to have, I guess, for want of a better expression, Beth, a perceived conflict of interest. But if you take somebody for what their face value is, and year after year, it seems that they can put certain things aside when it comes time to vote on behalf of their constituents. But once that shadow gets cast, it's pretty tough, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Yeah, once people are starting to ask the kinds of questions that are getting asked about this particular Big Island issue, it's going to be hard to recover from.
Okay, I did get one person ask me at the supermarket the other day, said, I know you don't take calls off the air about this, but why is it that some people, some Republicans, when they're running, you can't see the R anywhere on their signs? In other words, they're running, but it just says, I'm running for the House.
Yeah.
That is a decision that for some people must be hard to make.
It is a hard decision to make. I have an R on my sign. When I first ran for office, somebody that had run in that district before said, you don't want the first time for people to realize you're a Republican to be at the ballot box. There's going to be an R on your name then, so you might as well put it on your signs.
But I can also see that once you've been elected, don't rock the boat. In other words, if you're doing a good job, see, I'm trying to say that, and I would imagine, Beth, that this is what keeps you going and what keeps others in the minority party going. You know that the odds are stacked, but you do know that when somebody gets in the privacy of the booth, they're most likely to vote for what they think is right, not just because if it's a party. I hope. I
think so. I think a lot of people. It's changing with time. I don't know if that was true 20 years ago.
There is a ongoing battle which may have increased the awareness of all of us about the importance of this election. We keep saying every time, this is the most important election of our life. Well, this one kind of is.
Yeah.
Does it bother you to see what's going on at the presidential level when we can see this actual infighting between Republicans?
Yeah, I think people are saying it's the most important election. They're saying because of Supreme Court nominations, the Republican versus Democrat. all those things are important, but I think that the most important thing is that we are fighting for what the Republican Party is going to be and what it can be for the next 20 years. If we elect the wrong nominee, there's a good chance you're going to lose an entire generation of people.
Which it's got to be a sad bullet to bite, because that's not right. It shouldn't happen.
No, and it's frustrating for me as somebody that's sort of coming up in the party and has invested time and given up a lot of stuff to be in this party. It's sad to see it going a direction that.
Yeah, I got to tell you, I don't know how your reaction was. I have both pride and other things, but I do know that when Tulsi stepped out of line with the Hawaii delegation and decided to embrace the campaign of Bernie Sanders, everybody, you're crazy. Now headlines on the mainland: is this the VP?
Yeah.
So it. I know nothing amazes anybody, but isn't that a sign in the Democrat side that there's a lot of Democrats that are frustrated with same old too? Otherwise, Hillary would be way out in front.
Oh, yeah. I think both parties, you're seeing a big change, and you're seeing it amongst the young people. We've talked about this many times on and off the air, but I'm seeing the same problem with my own party, because I have, in theory, stepped out of line by making certain comments. But I want to see a party that I can be excited about. Yeah,
that's a good point. I do Tulsi Tuesday, as you know, and I've got a great relationship with the Congresswoman. Ideologically, polar opposites.
Right.
Here she's saying I'm a socialist. I like Bernie, but I don't know if she's saying I'm a socialist as much as she's saying even I don't like what's been going on with the current administration.
Yeah, I think she's saying she wants change, and she wants a direction for her party that, again, like I said, that we can both believe in.
You know what's kind of funny, and I think when I first met you, we talked. The most misused word in politics is change.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's so easy to beat the drum of change. Yeah. But when you see something black and white, and you see a bar graph of the importance of our country and the dependency on a lot of things, it says, well, if this is right, why are these numbers this way?
Yeah.
If we're doing right, why is it so bleak?
Right.
Why are there homeless?
Right. Right.
By the way, on that subject, recent announcements by both the governor and the mayor seems to me, hopefully, that we're holding hands a little bit. But does it make you as a lawmaker think that, hey, aren't we ignoring some laws because of this? Is it because of political correctness? Why aren't the current laws being, enforced that will take homelessness in our face?
Yeah, I think, homelessness has so many different aspects. Hopefully, some cooperation. I think if there isn't cooperation between the state and the city, that we can't do anything. And there hasn't been a lot of working together in the past, and we have different agencies that have all these different opinions and processes for homelessness. I think if they work together, they can actually do something. Yeah, I think you're right. And one of the things that we got a lot of comments on the other day when we're doing our Homeless Thursday was that a lot of times, and this is at the legislature right now, you're looking at bills, and we're looking at things saying, okay, people think that if they just throw money at it, it's going to go away. Right. But they're not looking about, okay, who's going to administrate the money, who's going to watch it, and who's going to make sure that it's going where it's supposed to go. Right. And we have a few different agencies that are working on homelessness, but people don't always know where to look, right, to make sure that it's getting spent well. So and I think in the minority we need to do a better job of making sure people know where to look when it comes to funding. Yeah, and that's the big monkey in the corner of the room, talking about funding. How often does the revenue report come in, the expected revenues come in? Because I do know it's been a while since it's been on the front page. So that must mean we have one. Council on Revenues report must be coming up. It usually comes out right after we end session, which is a weird time. I was going to say, why not a month before so you can decide on the last minute bills? Yeah, no, it's right before we end session. What is it? How valuable is it? What is it? For people who don't know what it is, what is that report? So the report basically says what the projected revenues are going to be for the state. So we use it as a budgeting tool. Basically, a bunch of economists get together and they look at our tax revenues and what's coming in, and they make assumptions and they take a guess. It's a very educated guess, but it's a guess. And they tell the legislature what the revenues are expected to be, and we plan based on that. And then the governor, after the legislature closes and the budget cycle closes, the governor has to watch that revenue to decide if he's going to not release funds. That's what I'm getting at. In other words, the value of it as a tool is after all the bickering's done, it still is going to rest on the governor's desk. Yes, because he can just decide to not release funds places. Yeah, and by the way, let's point that out.
I actually learned this from you several years back. Something being appropriated does not mean something's being paid.
It doesn't. And that's, the legislature can appropriate the funds, and we're talking about that again with Wahiawa General Hospital.
Sure.
The legislature could appropriate the $20 million that they need, or whatever they decide that they need. We could purchase that land. But will the governor, is he going to be supportive? Is he willing to release the money? Because otherwise we'll budget it elsewhere.
That's a really good point. Rep. Oshiro is so passionate.
Yeah.
Okay, and we had him in talking about this. This is not a political issue. This is a issue of human need.
Yeah.
And yet it has political ramifications because who's going to pay for it?
Right.
But it looks like, at least now, that this amount of attention that's been placed there has gotten results. It looks like it's going to stay, at least for the foreseeable future, doing what it's doing.
Well, we'll see. I think this is a good example of difference of opinion between the state and the Senate and the House.
You bet.
So the House, the House has zero money in there. Rep. Oshiro is asking for a straight out appropriation, just revenues, straight up cash to the hospital.
People say, "Wait a minute,"
right? It's a private organization that we're just going to bail out. It's a little odd. The Senate's recommendation was that the state purchase land from the hospital, and then we have a state asset for the money that got spent and turning that into a geriatric care facility that the state is already looking to do. So we could partner with the hospital, which makes a lot more sense to me than just an infusion of cash.
Yeah, and that's we had that during the early part of the Obama presidency, when this stimulus supposedly was going to fix everything, and what it did is it put another couple of trillion on our debt.
Right.
So are people living under a false sense of improving? Are things improving? Because you mentioned council revenues. Didn't we actually have a windfall? We actually collected more than they thought.
Yes.
So looks like we have this surplus. There's no
Yeah.
such thing as a surplus, is there?
We have a surplus. I think what we do with that is in question. I'm in favor of putting it into the rainy day fund because we know we're going to have an economic crisis again soon. So there is a surplus. It's not huge, but we have one.
Okay, now as a taxpayer, when somebody says, "Well, it's going to return to the taxpayers," even though I might get a little check, I don't want that money.
That's what I think.
I'm hoping people are saying that.
I'm hoping so too. I'm hoping people understand, rather than getting a $10 check in the mail, if that $10 can just stay with the state and get put into a fund so that if we do have a crisis, we can help ourselves. That makes sense.
Here's the slayer for me. To write me a check for $10 probably costs that much.
Oh, absolutely.
I can't wait a minute.
No, it's not. And I'm hoping people do understand that because we're voting to put it into the rainy day fund. And hopefully people aren't asking where their $10 is.
Unfortunately, there's some that saying, "Hey, wait, Beth, rainy day fund, it's raining every day." What I mean? We have a need every day.
Yeah.
Beth Fukumoto Chang and I are here. It's Minority Monday. If you'd like to join the conversation, the number is 296-KHNR.
It's right here and right now. Here's more of the Mike Buck Show on 690 The Answer.
Okay, that happens to be the very piece of music that the president was doing the tango to when he was watching baseball games and going to Argentina. So we use that as a piece of music. But speaking about that, Beth Fukumoto Chang is in the house, and we were just both looking at something showing that if Senator Cruz doesn't do in the next couple of days, or today and this week, that he would be eliminated. Numerically eliminated from even having an opportunity to win the nomination going into the convention. Everybody is confused about this whole thing. And what light can you shed on what a brokered convention would mean?
Well, I think so. First of all, recognizing that the primary system is not like a primary election that we have in the odd years, right? If I'm running for a primary, then we actually go to the polls that the state runs and we vote that way. The primary election for president and this caucus system is is sort of a suggestion. It's not actually an
It's like
election.
a backyard barbecue. Everybody
Right.
talks about what they want to talk about.
Right, and so it goes up the chain, and people say, different states say we probably would like Donald Trump instead of anybody else. But at the end of the day, the delegates that get elected can make their choices. There are some that are bound, so some of them can't change their minds, but there are enough that can change their minds that it can sway the whole election.
Okay, now let's talk about at the presidential election.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that don't understand and that have asked for the throwing out of the Electoral College because when it was set up, communication was difficult.
Yeah.
So sometimes somebody would have to get on a pony and ride.
Right.
But in today's instant grams, that's just not the case.
Yeah.
Is that something that is still valuable?
I think so. I think. Well, I don't know if the Electoral College is still valuable. I think it's a valuable conversation to have because people are so frustrated because we live in a world where you can get on your phone and text to vote for your favorite contestant on The Voice, and you see it get calculated in real time.
In real time, immediately. Yeah.
Right. So it's frustrating that the caucus system and the election system is the way it is.
Well, one thing that has certainly changed, and I know that you've embraced it and many others have, is social media is here to stay.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't believe that the entire country would stop to find out what Donald Trump tweeted the night before. I mean, I don't care what he tweets. In other words, there are many, many people that just say, hey, all that stuff is nice, but it comes and goes.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen MySpace disappear.
True.
And we've seen Facebook literally get turned into a commercial vehicle, so it's no longer impressive.
Right.
So people are starting to look for other things.
Right. I think the platform's going to change, right? The platform's going to change. MySpace changed into Facebook, and people migrate. But I think the process of having social media, of being able to constantly get whatever information you're looking for, that's staying. It's not going to go anywhere.
Well, the interesting thing, I was just talking to Raphael about this earlier. I was doing some work over the weekend, and I realized how cool this is. I can take a picture of a chair that I'm working on, and I can text it to this person who gave me the chair who's in a foreign country, and say, hey, look at your chair.
Yep.
And it can happen in a heartbeat. So we are so taking for granted this.
Oh, yeah.
But it also isn't kind of painting us into a corner saying, you better be looking nice every time you go out the door because we're watching you.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
All right, let's talk about the way the rest of the this session is going to play out. It's getting down, I know, to pretty much, are we going to be able to get everything done? Most people, from what I understand, maybe because it's an election year, saying, we'll probably be able to button it up. What do you think?
Yeah, last week and a half. I think so. I think we'll have a budget out this week and a lot of bills. I'm seeing, we talked last week about conferences. Conferences are moving. I think I've voted on 6 or 7 bills already. So things seem to be moving. We'll see how this week goes.
What is this week called, or what is this week, traditionally, what does this week mean?
I just call it second week conference.
Yeah.
It means that I have to wear flats
to
run all over the place.
A lot of hiking around, right? Yeah.
I have conferences in the basement and on the 3rd floor. But basically what it means is it's the last week for the House and the Senate to negotiate on any bills. So if we have differences, this is the last chance that we have to make a compromise.
Can people be comforted in knowing that, hey, wait a minute, just because your bill got hosed doesn't mean that most of us didn't want to do something on it, but it just either the language or the timing or something is just not right yet?
Yeah, and bills, I mean, they fall apart for all sorts of reasons. At the end of the day, you have to realize politicians are people, and our job is to negotiate with each other and ideally to make compromises. But you see at the last minute, sometimes people don't want to compromise.
That's the part that I'm most worried about. We talk about this every time we get together, and that is, all right, where are the gotchas going to come up? Because there's some people in whatever back rooms, Republican or Democrat, that are writing stuff down and saying, hey, you know what, let's go for this, but let's make them do this.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And this is the week where you start to see that stuff happening, and interesting bills are going to start to come out of conference.
As much as people can understand the Electoral College or caucuses, that's the next one.
Oh, yeah.
How can something be dead in the water halfway through the session and the last day become a law?
Oh, yeah. I still don't understand.
But, I want to circle the wagons, even though we don't take email. A lot of people do want to know what's left with regards to either funding or for doing something about low-cost housing or about making the different agencies that we talk about working together. Are there any bills with strength that are making some real statements about homelessness?
Well, we still have some TOD bills. So I think
What are that?
Transit-oriented development. So I like to look at homelessness in a bigger, wider, we need more housing, we need cost of living. And yes, there are low-income renters, credits, subsidies. We're looking at all that stuff still.
You know, there are a lot of people that are now realizing that there's a lot of attention being paid to it, so that there are some homeowners or property owners that are a little bit more likely to buy into, okay, I'll take this type of a tenant. Because from what we understand, this is going to be the biggest year in the country for remodels, in people's remodeling homes. Not buying new ones, just trying to fix their home up and make it a little bit better. But that also means that every time you have a low housing development come along, that creates inventory for where these people would have gone. In other words, you know what I'm talking about? They're looking at that thing out in Hawaii Kai, which turns out to be not so low cost after all. But seriously, more and more of those become available, do you think? Or, I mean, the housing is the number one. Where are we going to put all these people?
Yeah, no, I think we need more and more of those to become available. We need to make it easier for people to get into rentals. What we need is more rental housing available, actually.
Yeah,
and that's where we're lacking.
I do know that also that there are people that are concerned about zoning changes and about the ADUs and all of that. But maybe is there possible, I don't even know, I just thought of this. Would it be possible to enact legislation or enact rules that maybe vary for a little while for a set amount of time, saying, look, we have a crisis.
Yeah.
And this may not be the end all down the road, but it's a little bit more than a Band-Aid. So why don't we do this for a year or 2 or 5 or whatever it takes?
Yeah. I'm relatively certain the governor could just use an emergency proclamation and get around some of these rules because of homelessness. But I don't know that I recommend that way.
Many people, Beth, many people say, look, whoever came with compassionate disruption, it's not true. I mean, we're just disrupting them.
We're just disrupting them.
And so we need to say certain laws have got to be temporarily relaxed, or for instance, why would you even think of putting a rule on a retailer that he has to spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars so that somebody might steal his cart?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So anyway, we'll find out. What I'm going to ask Beth, and I think this will be cool, is next week.
Yep.
You'll know if there's any sliders that
everything next week. Yes.
Okay. In the meantime, listen, folks, if you have one of your bills that's still alive, maybe it's this 3071 that was mentioned earlier, go look. And I think that based on every single day breaking news, so to speak, that you guys are looking